I was born in Detroit, Harper Hospital. I was very young, and raised in the suburbs. Southfield, Michigan, really suburban, sort of Ozzie and Harriet values, except my father worked hard and my mother worked a bunch of different jobs. And I went to grade school and started right away with a learning disability. I'm dyslexic, and just got into various pieces of trouble. By the time I was in high school, I had a record that advanced before me, and people would look at my face and down at the record and seat me in the front. I enjoyed some sports a lot due to my mother, who was an acrobat and worked in jazz clubs and taught me acrobatic routines that were appropriate for little girls, because that's all she knew. So all the back bends, the close bending, the splits, those are the acrobatic routines that I learned. And then I got to high school, and the gymnastic coaches would look at me and just go, "We don't know what to do with that." And I was too limber. That's the other thing that I should say. I was way too limber. So I played football, and nowadays they scout out people that are hyper extensive. They just say, "You're too loose, you're going to tear your soft tissue," and I did. There was a speech teacher named Natalie Gelman that I had as a student teacher, and she was hot. And she was going to teach acting my senior year. And so I took acting my senior year, and then she got swapped out for a woman named Mrs. Bortz, Virginia Bortz. And I was just waiting till I could change the course, get into this Natalie Gelman speech class again. But I auditioned for a play, The Bad Seed, and I loved it. And so I kind of shifted. I didn't have any social status with, the cool guys with their hairs all greased back, and the really cool guys who had new frat uniforms, I want to call them. But I didn't fit in with any of the groups, and then I got in with these theater people, and I liked it. And I liked that I could do it well. I never knew that I could memorize whole pages of stuff in an afternoon. I got wrapped up in the days of rage, the politics, and smash the state, trash it. And then Kent State happened, and all hell broke loose on Eastern Michigan and University of Michigan. And I got into some trouble and walked away from a scholarship. In the spring of '70, there was a student strike at Kent State University in Ohio, and the National Guard was called in. And a unit of the National Guard went rogue and fired on demonstrators, killing 4. And it makes me cry now, and I have goosebumps. And I was very, I guess, affected. I feel like saying disaffected. I was, along with most of the young people in the country, really affected by it. Yeah. And this is a time of Vietnam, and there was a race uprising in Detroit in '67. It was a time of upheaval. My father and I had terminal mass arguments. He was my country right or wrong, and I was, I'm trying to make the country better. And we didn't reconcile until years later, and the Pentagon Papers had come out, and Walter Cronkite was against the war, but I had already kind of run away, and it took us years to get back together.
So there was all this turmoil going on socially. You were in theater, you did 2 years, and then what happened after you finished, you
I
left
wandered
school?
away. I really hitchhiked to Boston, where I had some friends that were folk singing in, and I was going to join them. I was going to be a folk singer. Hootin' Annie hootin', and then I found out I really can't sing. And so for a while I would try reading poetry like Richard Brautigan or Dylan Thomas. And, you know, if you've ever tried reading in a coffee or a dinner theater, it didn't work out for me. I auditioned for a play in Boston and I got cast. It was The Architect and the Emperor of Assyria. And it caused a huge controversy, a stink. There was an ongoing debate whether between the great critic Clive Barnes and the head of Yale, Brewstein, whether or not it should be banned. The critic from the New Yorker, a guy named John Simon, said he had the meanest reviews ever. John Simon. He said nothing. Who cares about this argument? There's nothing redeemable about the play, with the possible exception of Mr. Forrest's legs. Now that's a bad review.
That's awesome. That's really great.
Well, then that play closed, and I hitchhiked to Manhattan, and I stayed for a couple of months in Hell's Kitchen with college friends. And then I got a job at La Mama with Tom Ian. I forget what the show was called, The White Whore and the Bit Player. He's the guy who wrote Dreamgirls, but he had a play that he was rehearsing called The Harmful Effects of Mind, Air, and Body Pollution in New York City. And Clive Barnes, again, came to see it and let Ellen Stewart, the head of La Mama, know that he was going to give it a rave. So Tom said, well, wait, I want to change the name. Let's just call it The Dirtiest Show in Town. Genius. Dirtiest Show in Town. It's opening day, it sold out for 2 years.
Oh my God.
So I was a company understudy and then eventually worked into that play, and lots of things happened. There were strikes and things, but we ended up on Broadway. We went from Dave, remember going to the Astor Place Theater?
Yeah, for sure.
We saw Blue Man Group in the same theater that I did 3 years in. I mean, after 3 years, you become a lunch bucket kind of actor. You got things planned before and after the play, and you show up at half hour and throw the makeup on and do the play. And then it moved. It was at this really hip theater. You know, it was just all the hippoisie from Broadway and Scarsdale would come to this theater. Then we moved to the McAlpin Rooftop Theater, 34th and Broadway. And it was meat packer convention from Chicago, heating and duck people from other places, Illinois. And every night it was a different group of drunk white men. And there was some nudity in the show, but it was really about this clever interplay with people living in New York City. But every night we'd get, hey, you gonna take it off or not, Arnie? Get out of my way, boy. You're in the show too? It was gross.
Oh no.
But because of that 2.5-year, 3-year stint, I got a pension. It was a union.
Wow.
So then I got to San Francisco, and I started seriously with this acrobatics and juggling. And I had a juggling show. We made more money in 3 years juggling than I did all the time on Broadway.
Wow.
Passing the hat.
And that was playing like at festivals or in
Union
the street
Square.
or park?
We
Union
got
Square.
permission to play Union Square, and yes, we got chewed out by Harvey Milk at the Castro Street Fair because we set up in front of his camera store. So we made good money doing that. And then we opened for Bill Graham for a while. The Bay City Reds, this was. It was Joan Menken, Danny Menken, Merle Goldstone, even Jeff Raz played in it for a while. Billy Kessler. It was a big act, 5 people.
Yeah, that is big for a street act.
Well, we'd start off with 4, and then there'd be a shill dressed up in the crowd saying, "Oh, look, you dropped one of your clubs." And we'd eventually work them into the act and push-pull and a tearaway costume, and they'd be dressed up in this outrageous Reds costume.
This is David here. Hey, can you just take one step back and let us know what prompted you to head out to San Francisco when you were happening in New York?
I was happening in New York, but I was getting slowly sick of it. I went for a year without going above 14. No, I went to Max's Kansas City. That was on 17th Street, below Houston, east of A, west of 8th, a 1 mile square. And once in a great while, I'd go fishing, take the Staten Island ferry to Staten Island, and, you'd get these fish, and they're all translucent, and they have globes glowing on them and warts and stuff. I am an outdoorsy kind of person, and I was failing. It was very hard to meet girls. Would have been easier if I had been gay.
But didn't you see some particular work that...
I'm getting to it.
Oh, sorry.
So I have to tell you this. I think this is worthwhile. I had some money left to me by my grandfather, who was not wealthy, but they left me some money, and my mother had it designated so it could only be spent on higher education. So I took a class called aerial acrobatics from a guy named Joe Price, and then through that I met Hovey Burgess and Judy Finelli, and I got serious about circus. Then the San Francisco Mime Troupe came to town with their famous play, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, or their version of it was called The Dragon Lady's Revenge. And it was a dream for me. It combined comic book stereotypes with cartoon acting. Just epic, large-scale acting, and I wanted to do that. I auditioned for them, and they said, well, if you're ever in San Francisco, give us a call. In the meantime, they took some academic kid, Jay Hamburger. Anyway, I got out to San Francisco, and there had been a revolution, and all of the white male jugglers had left and formed the Pickle family circus, it was the Big Apple Circus. And it was a feminist revolution, and they weren't hiring white male actors. So I loved the Mime Troupe, and I tried to get in over the course of the next couple of years, but it never really worked out. I did plays for them, and I met their great director, J.L. Weissman, and he directed me in a couple of juggling acts and one children's show. And he and I became lifelong friends. He's the director that put Dell'Arte on the map.
So you moved there, even though you didn't have a job there, you just decided, fuck it, I'm going to San Francisco.
I did. I had a cat and a motorcycle, and there was a white van that went back and forth between San Francisco and New York City called the White Rabbit. And I got on that thing with 12 other people, and the cat and 2 dogs, and it was not a good trip. I finished it on the motorcycle with the cat, Bill. Bill lived for another 10 years. In San Francisco, I did a lot of kind of handyman work. I got some carpentry skills and tools, but most of the living I made was juggling. And eventually, a woman, Merle Goldstone, and she was part of the Reds as well. She and I had a juggling act called Bibi and Bebe Rebozo, and we took it to Mexico. And in 1974, we spent the better part of the year south of Mexico City in a little city called Coyoacán, and we were teaching this group, Los Mascarones, physical theater, circus skills. And unbeknownst to us, the theater had a contract with the PST, the Socialist Workers' Party of Mexico, to travel around and gather campesinos together so organizers could come in with bullhorns and talk to them. In other words, political organizing on a tourist visa. Oh, did we get in trouble? It was, and the campesinos in these rural places had really never seen organized, fast-talking Anglos juggling. So they just came around, and we'd start with 2 or 3 people, and it'd be 300. And it's just when it got good, oye, 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 brothers, and somebody would take over and start haranguing them with a political message. And we got into trouble, and after a couple months, 8 months, Merle called her family. I still feel I get choked up saying this, and got a plane ticket and $100 sent so that she could fly back to New Haven. And I had all the juggling equipment in a van, and I started working my way up from Acapulco, Guerrero, and I got to Puerto Vallarta before the federales stopped me. And I don't know what they had on me, but I sat on the side of the road, hands behind my head, in my underwear, all day. And at 5 o'clock, they took me to the station and they shook up a bottle of Coke and put it in my nose. And I saw lightning. I don't know exactly what they wanted to know. Something about revolutionaries, Tierra or Muerto, Lucia Cabana. I didn't know anything, thank God, because I would have told them everything. They let me go. But my esteem suffered. Being tortured in your underwear in front of ladies in the police station was a great way to start a career. And my sweetheart bought me, when I turned 25, Kung Fu lessons. And that became a passion. And it did help rebuild some esteem. I never got in another fist fight again. And I think I bring some of that Kung Fu, certainly the 4-minute exercise, which you mentioned earlier, all comes out of that Kung Fu experience. And as Carla would say, the ground is your friend. That's the essence of Kung Fu, is to be grounded, is to get strength from the earth. Oh, I love that. And I was part of a school where you had, this is a point of contention with me and all of the students that I taught, is that in Kung Fu you have to show your teachers something. So you practice the basic stance work and the punches for 2 years or 18 months before the teachers will talk to you. The first classes I had at Dell'Arte, the students were furious with me for holding back. Michael and Joan developed this joke where the students would want it all right away, and they would pretend to open a drawer in their desk. You want the answers? Here they are. Oh, keep training. But those are the things that I brought to the mix at Dell'Arte. Was strong theater and some Shakespeare from college, strong physical acting and acrobatics, circus, juggling, props, handling of props, and Kung Fu. And that mixed, Joan brought this incredible sense of realism and dance and a real psychological approach to the work. I mean, I don't mean sub underneath, but a very strong psychological approach to the work. And Michael was rigorous in his Shakespeare and stage combat. It made for a good mix. And that's Jail's vision. He went out and recruited people that he thought, well, we're going to take a look at this woman, Mara Sabinson, because she plays so hot and Joan plays cold. You know, it was like, Jail was like putting a company together on the theories of metaphysics or something.